It's not just the federal scientists, but the entire infrastructure to fund research across the board, not just climate, everything in the United States with the removal of grant funding. The entire structure that the United States built up since after World War II is being devastated and destroyed. All the university researchers depend on federal grants to do work. And I'm not talking just climate, we're talking environment, we're talking health, everything. All of that infrastructure and reliance on federal funding across the board was summarily just stopped.
What
And
reason did they give you when they let you all go?
they didn't. They just said, we were contractors, so we were just told to stop work.
Hi, welcome to a new and exciting edition of Code Green Conversations for a Future We Want and Our Kids Deserve. I am thrilled to have with me a couple who I met in Los Angeles, actually, specifically at the Hollywood Climate Summit. I've talked about that. I interviewed the founders a few interviews ago. This was in early June, and I was fortunate to be introduced or bumped into Rabbi Devorah Lynn. And why was that so fortunate? I've heard for years about Jewish Earth Alliance. And one of the women who I know locally in the Bay Area, Louise Lipsy, has been very active in organizing terrific Zoom events where they meet with congressional representatives, if not the representatives themselves. But then when I found out she was married to a scientist, a climate researcher and scientist with a background at NASA, who had recently been retired, I think is the word. Dr. Fred Lipschultz is the rabbi's husband. So we have both spirituality and science here. Quite a team. I'm honored to have you both. Thank you for being available. There's so much to say in this hot moment, but let's start with I want to talk about the Texas flooding in a moment. But if you could, can I call you Fred? Because I called Deborah Deborah. Okay. Uh, we're longtime friends. We met this morning. Well, no, we met in Hollywood, but we met on a Zoom for Earth Alliance this morning. So I feel like I know her very well and pleased to do so. We've heard about all these scientists being fired, let go from NOAA, from the National Weather Service, from all these organizations, climate change being deleted from websites, government papers, insanity that goes without saying, but we will talk about that. What is your direct experience? Because I have yet to meet, and I'm sorry to meet you under these circumstances, someone who actually was impacted by these insane rollbacks.
The project that I've worked on for the last 15 years as part of my work at the U.S. Global Change Research Program was the National Climate Assessment. And I worked on the third, fourth, fifth, and we were just cranking up the sixth. And all of it has been taken down from the websites. It's only available now from archive sites. And all of the authors for the current version that we were working on that was due to be delivered by law in another 2.5 years. They were all the volunteers were let go, all of the staff, i.e. me and others, were summarily fired, essentially. And we were told to cease work immediately. And so that whole project is gone. Many other websites have been shuttered. And I think, though, that the interesting thing is that it's not just the federal scientists, but the entire infrastructure to fund research across the board, not just climate, everything in the United States with the removal of grant funding. The entire structure that the United States built up since after World War II is being devastated and destroyed. All the university researchers depend on federal grants to do work. And I'm not talking just climate, we're talking environment, we're talking health, everything. All of that infrastructure and reliance on federal funding across the board was summarily just stopped.
What
And
reason did they give you when they let you all go?
they didn't. They just said, we were contractors, so we were just told to stop work. We weren't federal employees directly.
But there
Most
were federal employees who were fired, correct?
were all told to go back to their agencies, or if they were temporary employees of the federal government, they were sent back to wherever they came from and just told it was no longer a priority to be working on these things. But it's total removal of funding and the entire pipeline of students and young faculty and people doing all of the work across the nation beyond just the federal scientists that is now completely under threat and will disintegrate very quickly. People have to find jobs and other ways to do things. Universities have built infrastructure to do the research over decades since World War II, and rely on those funds. And all of a sudden, there's no glide path provided. It's just a complete cessation of universities across the board for these grants. And that's going to devastate the seed corn for research and science in the United States.
And that alone is crazy and destructive and inexplicable. But in this hot moment where extreme weather events are hitting everybody everywhere all the time, or so it seems, or so it will be, how do you digest this? How do you process this? Because it is inexplicable, except for politics, except for the fossil fuel industry that put a lot of money into Trump's pocket in exchange for, do our bidding. Uh, I'm not I'm not fired because I'm not employed, but I'm outraged every day by these things going on. It actually happened to you and your colleagues. How does it feel, and what are you doing in response? And we will get to you, Rabbi, I promise.
I'm patient.
Okay, you have to be.
Yeah, I mean, we're all shocked and dismayed, not just for ourselves. Um, I mean, I'm too old to be, as affected, but the all of my younger colleagues in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, everybody is really affected in their career and their hopes and their desires for um, healing the earth and doing good with their life and doing the right thing to move things forward to try to heal the earth. That's all being stopped, and they're having to, and there's no obvious path for them. There's no place to absorb all of those people or to give them purpose. And I think there are people who were trying to think of this as an opportunity to rethink how are we going to provide those opportunities and to move things forward over the next years before we get a reversal of these really devastating policies.
I think all of us present know what's behind this, but just put words to it. What is wrong with this picture? What is going on?
Obviously, there's an anti-science, anti-university, anti-elite feeling that, a lot of the public, I guess, and a lot of the people who support the current administration and people in the administration just don't support the kind of work that science provides them and the products and their which is kind of odd given the
Mhm.
strong investment that China puts into it and their interest in competing with China, yet we're providing them the widest open field to just do whatever in technology and in other advances. And so, yeah, you just can't stop everything on a dime and expect that we'll be able to pick it up again in the future. So it's not even that once in 4 or 5 years or whatever time money starts to come back into the existing mechanisms that the United States have used for science and health research and everything else since World War II. Um, it's all just going to fall apart. There won't be anyone there to pick it up. And I would say a decade is going to be lost minimally before we even can start to pick up momentum again.
And a brain drain.
Huge brain
Huge
drain,
brain drain.
even if they don't leave the country, which is typically what one says when they mean brain drain. In reality, I think it's just going to be people who are going to have to find jobs to support themselves and their family. And so they'll be leaving research, leaving academia. The infrastructure of the equipment that's there will not be maintained and upgraded and updated and kept up with the latest technology. Everything, anything think of is going to be damaged.
At the worst possible moment, the 11th hour, the window for acting on climate is closing. as we speak. Extreme weather events have been predicted, but not that they would come so quickly and so ferociously.
What I don't understand is that the billionaires we're always talking about, see, my feeling is that they base their billions on science and technology. Is that a simplification?
Now that's an ironic observation. Yeah, yeah.
I can't, there's so many things that are ungraspable that are just make no sense.
I don't know if
And
ungraspable is a word, but that is the perfect word. There's so many things that are just counter, like, huh? What? I mean, Elon Musk and Donald Trump, did you ever think in a million years you put these together? But it was predicted that it wouldn't last long with their egos. And Elon Musk, our great green hope, who turned into a big red dope, haven't heard suddenly he's disappeared. It's all Epstein files all the time. I'll tell you what it isn't on the news. Climate change. And of course, it was mentioned in the Texas floods and LA fires, but there's nothing about what we can do about it. There's nothing about the solutions. There's no regular programming. That's sort of my preoccupation and has been for a long time. But it's all these, Donald Trump's chaos and scandals du jour. And none of it makes sense. It's all just whack, 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 wacky and whack-a-mole. And I don't know if it's by design to just make everybody so dizzy that we can't focus on the last scandalous thing that happened. And it's not just Trump, but his cabinet, his appointees, and let alone just, what's going on in the world of wars, Mideast, Ukraine. It's such a dangerous moment. Let's turn to you, Rabbi. What wise words do you have for anyone who might be losing sleep at night? Me, perhaps?
losing faith is a feeling that comes and goes. I'm thinking that a lot of the news that we get are distractions, and two things that I found out belatedly was that the fossil fuel companies were using the same marketing tools and the same even ad agencies as the cigarette people to deflect, deny, and delay the attacks against their products. And they did it by distraction.
Right.
And so I think, a lot of this is it's a fire hose of distraction now. And to distract us from the work that needs to be done. And there are some media places that are going to the quote good news of what is happening in regenerative and renewal products and implementation.
But they're not on CNN, MSNBC, haven't been for years, and inexplicable, ungraspable also. But you forgot one D word, disinformation, because I don't watch Fox, I can't, but Media Matters monitors them, so we don't have to. And they're still lying about climate change. And that's part of the reason we have Trump and Trump 2.0, because if half the country realize that climate change is not a hoax, that it is here, it is upon us, it's coming for all of us, why would they vote so obviously against their own interests if they love their kids' country, planet, right? So clearly, and I don't blame activists. Activists gets blamed for not getting the message across. I blame my former broadcast news industry for doing news by popularity. They say, well, our viewers don't really like it, because I've pitched all the network executives over the years. And it's one excuse after another. Now they think they're covering it, which is kind of greenwashing because it's de minimis, another D word. And if people just imagine when I talk about this, sometimes people look at me like, what do you mean? If the news networks talked about climate change the way they talked about COVID, life and death, we had behavior change overnight, and more people have and will die from climate, not only extreme weather, but diseases, air turbulence, all the ills, right? Trees are dying, the planet is dying, ecosystems are dying, the ocean is dying. And there's obviously a huge education crisis, eco-illiteracy crisis, don't you think?
Yes, and I think that the pandemic gave people in the environmental field hope that people could turn on a dime. Look, see, you have turned on a dime, changed your life.
Right.
And but it was it seems to be short-lived, that we've gone back to extractive and consumptive ways. My organization teaches people how to form relationships with their members of Congress, Jewish Earth Alliance. We formed, Mirala Goldsmith and I founded it in 2019, months before the pandemic, and we were actually hand delivering letters that people would mail us from across the country to their members of Congress. We were going to the Capitol and the buildings that surround it, the offices, and delivering these handwritten, many times, letters. And then the pandemic came and we had to punt. And we punted, like most people, to Zoom, and that actually increased our coverage tremendously. We expanded in the number of states where we have Jewish groups, both small, medium, and very large, that communicate with their members of Congress on a regular basis every month. And then we have 2 lobby days a year. We just had one today. But that was the intriguing thing about the Hollywood conference, the Hollywood Climate Conference. What intrigued us was they wanted to hear our stories because they understand that the media in their neighborhood is not coming out with enough about solutions.
Right.
It's all disaster movies.
Right. Right. It's either day after tomorrow, whatever it was, don't look up. It's either like almost farcical, but it's like just like we went from what problem to it's too late, and I've been fighting for something in between, like what can we do about it? And there's so many solutions and solutionaries out there, but the networks, they won't let that on because it might offend their fossil fuel advertisers. I'll just say it because I've experienced it directly firsthand. This is not hearsay. I mean, I've gotten lame excuses for why they wouldn't want a program on how we're going to save humanity. Like, really, it would be funny if it wasn't so
Right.
deeply, deeply serious and tragic. And
The media is in deep trouble.
yeah, well, maybe one of the reasons young people aren't watching the news is because they're not hearing what they're concerned about reflected. And maybe part of the reason young people are depressed and suicidal, it's not just social media, which is what they usually just blame. What about adults not doing enough to make sure they have a survivable future, like and media and government and politicians and presidents not talking about climate change, let alone addressing it. That could be a reason they're a little down. No?
And I was talking about distractions, and sometimes, and so the work that we give our people to do, which we do on a very regular basis, every month we have an action alert that we ask them to call or write or text or email their members of Congress and tell them their opinion about it. Is that busy work? Is that a distraction that just is keeping hopes alive, but nothing's happening? So, since the Congress has shifted over in January, that has become more of a question. And yet there is room for something going on. Recently, they just passed the big ugly bill, and everybody said, "Oh, well, why should we lobby?" It's done, it's over, but it isn't over because there is the budget that must be voted on to fund that bill. And that has a lot of leeway. And whereas the bill itself, reconciliation of the bill, needed only 51 votes in the Senate, and a simple majority in the House, it needs 60 votes in the Senate. So that means they have to have some Democrats. And so that shifts the power a bit. It's still a really great challenge, but it is a challenge that can be moved. So we are encouraging people to keep going. And more people are signing up for us. We had a 50%, I think, increase in the number of people who lobbied today over our last lobby 6 months ago.
And yet it really frightens, concerns, depresses me when I hear some people, like environmentalists, are like giving up. Like and I don't blame them. I mean, I've wondered if what I've been doing as a volunteer for 28 years, they just in one fell swoop wipe back so much hard-fought progress under Obama and Biden. And yes, it is one party that's the problem. Not one Republican voted for the Climate Act. Okay. Uh, the fact that we can be at this tipping point for not just the climate, but oceans and atmosphere and currents, ocean currents, like what good is anything going to be on a dead planet, right? Money, jobs, it's crazy, right? And yet here we are. And for me, this is like surreal 28 years of what's wrong with this picture? This is not on television.
There
And
are other crazy statistics, like Texas is implementing more renewables than any state in the union, even
they
California.
won't talk about it. The Republicans won't talk about it.
And
Um,
China is
and China's
putting in
going
tremendous amounts of solar and wind,
They're whipping our butt. EVs, solar.
and it's cheaper, it's more
Right.
cost effective. And so Republican areas, and that's one reason that the previous administration with the BIL money was pushing money into Republican
red
states,
states.
and they are now experiencing lower energy costs and so forth because they'll be able to put in solar and do all these other things as opposed to going back to the more expensive oil and gas approaches that this administration has been pushing.
And yet they
So
voted for the big, bad, ugly bill, even though
it,
their states are benefiting, Florida, Texas.
that's all it's all
So
ideological, and
is,
there's no rationale. It's ideology and
but is it a tipping point? I mean, I honestly believe that most of the people who say they don't believe in climate change in Congress say they're not stupid, and they do, but they are towing the line. And why they don't convert to becoming Democrats, I'm not, well, they would feel they would lose the election. So there's, this bipolarness
it's
going on,
tribal allegiances dominate humans forever and
dissonance.
continue
Yeah.
in every society and at all ages. So it's just finding their tribe and they're staying within it and within the bounds of what the tribe um, understands as the narrative.
And
And
ironic in so many ways, but we're the information age, we're all connected, and yet the facts don't seem to sway these people.
we're not connected. That's the whole point. The fracturing after Walter Cronkite left and the rest of it, we don't watch the evening news. We don't have a communal understanding in the United States, and the internet has caused Facebook, all the things that were supposed to bring us together,
True.
actually fractured and splintered us. So people in these different tribes can focus on the sources that they want to look at and they hear what they want to hear. So the I like to say
Yeah,
that the
I
old
like this.
the old saw about
Seeing is believing.
seeing is believing. I'm from Missouri, and seeing is believing. It's actually believing is seeing. What you see is what you believe.
And you filter out the
You
rest.
filter out all the rest. You don't even see it. And so that's tribalism, and that's the fracturing that we see across the board with this new media landscape over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And I think it's going to accelerate even more now with AI generating vast amounts potentially of disinformation. And we just saw that with Grok and the Nazi thing that it just came out with, and many other evidence of AI and just narratives that can be pushed into particular tribal viewpoints.
Okay, so it's also depressing, truly it is, especially if you're one like we are, and most people I know deeply, concerned about we Jews, we Tikkun Olam, and it's not just certainly not just Jews, but I've met a lot of Jewish environmentalists over the years, and it's so hard to. I mean, if you have children and grandchildren, I don't know how anybody could give up, and I don't know why more parents and grandparents are not in this fight with us. But it crushes me when I talk to people who have been fighting and they're giving up the fight. Like we can so ill afford that. And it feels like the bad guys are winning and the good guys are suffering. And as I say, bad people lie and children die. It's
I
not
don't,
anything less than life and death.
One of the things here, I think, is that there is a lot of, I think, recognition within the business community, which tends to be far more fact-based, because profits are,
at stake.
at stake. The ability of a business to stay in business and make money is predicated on facts and gathering knowledge, and you can't manage what you can't measure. And so I think in those, that is still going to be continuing regardless of the way the federal government approaches things and the kind of things that they're slowing down now over the next years. And certainly around the world, all the multinationals, countries like in Europe, but China in particular, India. I mean, Modi in India wrote decades ago a book about climate change and the impact it would have on India. And so people are aware of it elsewhere. It's just the US current federal administration, and I wouldn't say that that extends to a lot of states. More than half the states belong to the US Climate Alliance, which is a state-based governor's approach to climate change. There's a lot of still positive energy and a lot of action. And people, once you learn things, it's very hard to unlearn them.
You would
And
think.
a lot of people have been educated over the last years about climate change, and it's very hard to say, to forget that. And so
Even when we wish we didn't know as much as we know sometimes.
it's this constant glare from the administration that's hard. It makes it hard to hear anything else, like the good news about all these businesses and states and other nations moving forward and being reality based about climate change.
But that was part of the problem, that people were sticking their heads in the sand and just following what they've been doing for decades. And I mean, maybe it's a bit Pollyannish, but I have these shifts that I would like to see of people, like Fred said, that the government has been so slow to act, but companies are not that slow. And so if the business of climate shifts to corporations, I have a belief that things will go faster because it's profitable. And even without major the subsidies that they're taking away from renewables. And the other thing is that I would like to see people think of the future that they want. What is the future that you say it in your title, don't you? The future that the kids deserve. That we need to really start thinking of what are the benefits of all these, like cleaner air. I was just at a Wisconsin meeting and they said the air pollution there is terrible and they don't even know where it's coming from. Maybe fires from Canada, but they're investigating it. They don't really know. What are the qualities of life that will be so much better? Because Americans are very stressed out. The quality of life here has not been good for decades, but nobody has really been recognizing it.
What would you just touched on, Rabbi, what you would like to see happen? What can people who are watching who don't want to give up and have moments where they seriously consider it, why continue to fight when it seems like the odds are stacked against us? Sometimes it seems like Mother Nature, Gaia, is not helping us. We just have such bad luck. Like, who would have thought Trump could come in after Obama and then Trump again and have this, educational gap in our public that just is not understanding what's at stake? Yeah, I guess I'm asking for some encouragement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just feel that if we can dream of what a future will look like, if we can pick an organization to work with, and I recommend picking one thing. Like I had to say, okay, I'm going to work on climate and I can't work on everything. And so when I get hit with, 8 million texts a day asking for money for 8 million different causes, I erase them. And that's not a great thing for a rabbi to say, but this is what I'm doing. And so in order to prevent the overwhelm, I suggest that people find an organization that they feel passionate about. They will find like-minded people. They will feel a sense of fulfillment of doing something.
Yes.
And to talk to people and dream about what a world without fossil fuels, without blackened skies and polluted waters, a
And
world that
so much junk we don't need.
There's an old political cartoon that I often show in talks that has someone a lecturer up in front of an audience and basically is saying, well, even if we're wrong about climate change, just imagine what a better world would be
Right.
with these things that will flow from investments in getting rid of coal and air pollution and all the other things by electrifying and doing all of the other activities that flow from us being right, but even if you think we're wrong, we'll still have a better world. The other framing that I use is, scientists will always have a graph of data and stuff, and they'll put time on that on the axis, and they'll say, in 2050 or in 2100, the world will look like this. Take that off and put today is my time, 2050 is my children's time, 2100 is my grandchildren's time. And think that forces you to envision, as the rabbi was saying, what will the world look like for our grandchildren? And what do I envision that they're going to inherit from us? Why do I live where I live? And what values and things that I enjoy doing if I want to take my kids fishing, if I want to take them hunting, so if you're conservation, if I enjoy
If I
hiking,
want to plant a tree.
all these things flow from that shifting of the amorphous number in the future to your children and your grandchildren and your things that you want them to experience the way you did. That's a very much more human-centered storyline approach.
Mhm.
And I recently became a grandmother. I know your grandparents, and there's nothing like looking at your young baby, now toddler, and doing the math and thinking, what's life going to be like? That's a motivator. I can't not do this, right? We all need to do everything we can. And I encourage young people, if you're interested in becoming a journalist, look for environmental journalism work or create it. If you want to be a lawyer, environmental law needs you. If you want to be a doctor, look for healthy plant-based medicine,
Well, so
kinds of practices. There's a put a twist of lime on everything, and we'll need you, and you will have job security because we're here as far as sustainability goes now, especially in this country. We need to go here if you guys hope to have families that can prosper and survive. And they get excited because I tell them they're at the right time, perfect time. I was way ahead of the curve. And I say, go home and tell your parents to get off their gases. We parents need to be, and grandparents need to be doing our part, especially if we supposedly have more time and income. Even if you're retired or not, there's reason to be invested in the future.
there's an organization called Elders Climate Action, and they have their members write letters to their grandkids and telling them what they did about it.
And
About
Third Act, of course, from Bill McKibben, 350.org. I wanted to just go back for a minute before we wrap up. We mentioned Texas. I just recently moved there from Hill Country, about an hour from where these devastating floods were. And having lived there for 7 years, more conservative than Austin Hill Country, the outskirts of Austin, having neighbors that were against our solar panels, first ones in the neighborhood, to put them in, and seeing Trump parades, and it's real. Okay. I know for a fact, and I didn't even have to live there to know this, but there is such denial of climate change. Not necessarily every Republican, but you got Governor Abbott, you got Dan Patrick. None of them will even mention it still. I mean, and it's so at Ted Cruz. These politicians should not be there, should not be leaders if they don't accept the science. And because they don't, and they don't talk about it, these poor people, it's not just Texans, of course, but what happened at this camp. People who are responsible need to understand it's not nature that's bad, it's what we have fueled, what we have done to Mother Nature, that we must take these warnings seriously because it's always, we've never seen anything like this. And we're going to have nothing we've ever seen before events going forward. And so I just think it's so critical. Like it's not just politics. It can't just be ideology, and that's okay. It can't just be entertainment on Fox, and that's okay. It's not. And we need to shout about that because it will save lives. It's tragic enough what happened to those poor kids, all of the people who died, but the fact that probably they probably voted for Trump and they probably don't even know that that was related to climate change. That's how active the hush hush and the denial is, even after all these events.
Well,
So,
just like the turning point events that you see in all of Donald Trump's career, that everyone just that would kill a normal politician. None of these things matter. People just roll with it and go back to their normal daily lives.
and
That's
we're
what
exhausted. We're
people do.
exhausted.
And the same thing is true with climate, weather events, and the rest of it is people simply go back to their daily lives.
But
I mean,
their lives are endangered if this grows and it's growing.
Yep.
I had hopes that, after the fires in California, we were relatively involved with it. Our oldest grandchild was having a bar mitzvah in the shadow of the fires, and we didn't know from one moment to the other whether the building where it was going to be standing, but it did. It all happened on target. But I was looking at the pictures of the devastation there and thinking, wouldn't it be great if it was built back in a different way? But I'm not that Pollyannish to believe that that's the way it's going to be. That the necessity to build back and the lack of money to do it is going to dictate not building renewable kinds of housing, or even communities that are more efficient and have more green space and that kind of thing. And I'm sad about that. But we'll see. We'll see. It's possible that there will be an innovative resurrection of is it Altadena? The town and the Palisades.
Mhm. Well, when I hear people say they're going to rebuild, when they're like on a barrier island, whenever in Florida, I can't keep track of which hurricane I call them, hurricanes on steroids. It's like, no, don't build back there. You're going to get hit again. Like people just don't know. They just don't know.
Companies need to step up. They are stepping up because their bottom line, their profits are in danger, and they need to be much more vocal about it. That they're not going to insure. Well, they're not insuring in California,
Right.
not
Right.
insuring on the shore. So, I mean, those market forces are going to force change.
And they're not insuring out in the country in the greater Bay Area, Sonoma County. I mean, you can't get insurance. It's fire country. It's wildfire country. And with more drought and 80-mile-an-hour winds, which did not happen when I was growing up in the Bay Area, these things move faster, they're more ferocious, they're more
Mhm.
fast and furious. And that's what part I don't understand. Like self-preservation, that's an innate human, drive. And that alone doesn't seem to be scaring people. The fact that it should be clear it can happen to wealthy people in Pacific Palisades and, people who live in cabins in the Paradise campfire area. It's coming for all of us. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. And again, it's not nature's fault. Nature has been screaming at us, don't kill me, don't kill me. And now she's shouting really, really loud and angry, and who can blame her?
It can be early, it can be harder perhaps for some of early adopters, people who recognize that this was happening earlier. Like oddly, as people were becoming more aware, I went through a period of getting angrier and angrier that it hadn't happened earlier. Because as a child, I knew this was going on. I was very early aware of, I don't know why. I had to get over that. I had to get over
Still
that.
trying. I'm still trying 28 and a half years into this. Like, what? It's crazy making, right? What is logical about ignoring this threat to everybody, everything we hold dear in this
I
country?
talk to people who have a logic to it. They say the stage is set. and might as well just have a good time. But this was always
Belly
the
up to the bar. It's too late, you
yeah,
know.
this was always the I always felt this was the big lie of the opposition, which was why bother voting? Nothing ever happens. We no longer try to convert um, deniers. We're trying to find the people who know it's happening and don't know what to do about it. And here we are giving you something to do about it.
Exactly. And I've heard that's about 60% of the people, and this a couple of years ago, maybe it's changed, but there's like 20% of the population, the denisosaurs, as I call them, forget it, don't waste our time and energy.
Right.
They
And
can they can Google it and find out the facts. Okay.
was
And there's 20% of us who lose sleep over this. And there's maybe 60% of people who know something's going on. They want to know more, but they don't know where to find it. And all the research shows people do want governments to do more. They want corporations to do more. They want to do more. No one's asking them to do anything, or do they know what to do? And that's partly where I get back to the media not doing their job to make this front and center much more frequently and loudly.
for decades was giving deniers equal time, even though they didn't deserve equal time.
Right.
That was a huge mistake, and they figured that out, but it was late in figuring that out.
And having been on Fox and News Nation, they still have me up against a fossil fuel show. So they still have deniers on. They're doing their audience a favor by having me on, and they think that their regular guy, the fossil fuel, and Dr. Alex Epstein. I don't know if he's a doctor. Alex Epstein. He works for the oil industry, but he talks about how all the wonders of fossil fuels and how that has progressed humanity. Yeah, it did, got us this far. And there's a little bit of a backfire here, you know.
And that's one of the key points about this whole discussion. You know, you said you've been at this for
Too
28 years.
long.
Reality, science had nothing to offer until recently, in that it was just simply we're addicted to the energy that's cheap, and it did do all of those good things as your opponent on the news is going to say, and that's all true. And so we had no alternative other than to go back to the cave and wear furs and go back a
Yeah, that
long
was a
time
big
ago.
selling point.
We had no solution. Now we have cheap solar, cheap wind. We have a wide swath of solutions that have been only developed and made cost effective to compete with that cheap energy solutions that did deliver all of those benefits over 150 years of the fossil fueled growth in the world. And we had nothing. So we had nothing to offer. So I really would start your timeline maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when science was able to deliver, and investments of the US government and other countries in research and basic research allowed us to get to a point where we can say there are better futures that we can envision, as opposed to futures that push us back to times before we had abundant and cheap energy. So you really have to think about it in that longer term arc of what was possible, and what, again, coming back to where we started the discussion around the science, is now we're cutting off that lead time that gave us the solar and gave us all the wind and gave us all of these advantages. That started back with Carter back in the 70s, and developing solar and putting it and pushing
The solar panel on, Reagan took it down, and it's been downhill since then.
all that, and the developing the technology and the science behind that. We're benefiting today from the investments over decades. And now this administration is cutting that whole approach off, and we'll be stopping all of that, so that when we look out 20, 30 years in the future, it's going to be whatever China
Yeah. And, and
wants.
and this is the great businessman, Donald Trump, right? All America, American first, make America great again.
There's a great little cartoon that shows a family in a cave, and there's the father and the children. They're around a little fire, and the father is saying, "For one brief moment, children, the return on investment was really great." And that's exactly the problem here is that people that are interested in making money today don't worry about their children and their grandchildren because they're going to be making money for shareholders and stakeholders today and not worrying about I mean, we saw it with the drug crisis around opioids. They were making money hand over fist and didn't really care about the impact. They were still
And it's leading to the downfall of America. It really is. This is no exaggeration. Anyway, want to end on a positive note. I'll leave it there where you talked about what you are hoping. I hope you find another very significant, impactful position. We need all scientists. Dr. Fred Lipschultz, thank you so much. Rabbi Devorah Lynn, thank you so much. Toda Rabah. We'll have you back again to talk a little bit more about Jewish Earth Alliance, but having you together in this moment just seemed right, and I really appreciate you making time kind of last minute. And I want to urge anyone who wants to hear more of these conversations to please go to YouTube at Betsy Rosenberg Interviews, and you will see I do one a week. If I get enough viewers and a sponsor, I can do one a day. And there is a long list of people I cannot wait to get on and who want to come on, who have so much wisdom and passion to share. And that's why I do what I do all these years. So please subscribe, because if I don't get the numbers, you can't get the advertisers, and we're only going after the good green ones, believe me. But there's plenty. Unlike when I was doing this 25 years ago, there's a lot of green companies. It's not just Tom's of Maine and Seventh Generation and Stonyfield Farms anymore, but they all want to know what's your audience. So because this beat applies to everyone, as I say, well, no, not everyone, only those who eat, breathe, or drink. Tell everybody you know that this is important and there's so much we can do. And the antidote for the anxiety, eco-anxiety is real, is action. And I'm sure you've seen it at every conference you've gone to. It was happening at the climate summit in Hollywood, but probably 300 I've gone to over almost 30 years. Everybody there is really positive, really excited, can't wait to share what they're learning. It's the opposite of what the public might expect, right? We're not gloom and doom. I mean, we have our moments, but that is the cure, is finding other like-minded people. But we need to grow that tent. We need to grow that choir and bring everybody in, because it is impacting all of us already, and will only get worse if we let the bad guys win. The bad guys being those who refuse to take their heads out of the sand and look at reality. It's really that simple. Thank you so much.
You're
You're
welcome.
welcome.
Be
Thank
well.
you. Good
Do good
evening.
work.
You too. Have a great green tomorrow.